Can you guys hear me? Hello. We're going to make a video real quick before I go get my laundry. But it's GZTV, we're back and we are here to review the Season 4 opener for Better Call Saul. You know, the boys are out doing stuff, so I figured I'd crank some videos out. We did start watching Dahmer. I'm gonna watch another episode of Dahmer tonight and Friday. So we're gonna watch the first 3 episodes of Dahmer this week, and the next week we're gonna watch the next 3, so forth. Unless I feel like I can watch a bunch of more TV when I'm at my house this weekend. So, you know, we're just going to get into the plot. We're going to get into the critical reception. You guys know what happened in the Season 3 finale. So, coming into Season 4, we know the implications. We kind of assumed what happened to Chuck, and we assumed the worst, and we assumed correct. There's an opening and a main story. The opening is a lot longer than the normal openings for episodes, but yeah. Anyways, in a flash forward, Gene Takovich has collapsed at the Omaha Cinnabon and is raced to the hospital, but is discharged after doctors confirm he did not suffer a heart attack. So obviously, Gene Takovich is Saul later on in his life, and he suffers a medical emergency, and he's all right. And it turns out he doesn't have a heart attack, so that's good. As Gene leaves, the receptionist stops him to obtain billing information, and make sure he's legit, make sure he's a real person, which is kind of ironic, given what happened in Breaking Bad. She has difficulty processing Gene's identification, making him apprehensive, but she quickly realizes her mistake and corrects her error. So he was kind of on thin ice there for a second because he thought that maybe his fake identification... They knew that he had fake identification, and they were going to kick him out of the state and try to find him for what he was. That's what he thought at first. He's probably had some close calls with that, given he's not even a real person technically. But yeah. Gene takes a taxi to the mall where his car is parked, but becomes uneasy when he sees the driver make eye contact, and he recognizes an Albuquerque Isotopes air freshener on the rear view mirror. So obviously he knows that this guy's from Albuquerque and that he possibly can recognize him as Saul Goodman from the Breaking Bad universe. That's kind of the implications there with that stare down. He's like, dude, you scammed me as Saul Goodman, I guess. He asks to be let out before reaching the mall, then walks quickly and anxiously around the corner and out of the driver's sight. So obviously a close one there. Gene was going through a roller coaster of emotions there in the opening. But let's get into the main story. Howard Hamlin calls Jimmy McGill and Kim Wexler about the fire at Chuck McGill's, and they arrive at Chuck's body is taken away. So obviously he died from this house fire, and his body's getting taken away. They didn't make it in time to see his body. They probably didn't want to, frankly. Jimmy sees the appliances outside Chuck's home and realizes his electromagnetic hypersensitivity symptoms returned, and these symptoms obviously pushed him past the breaking point because his house burned down. And we all know that he didn't do this accidentally. His lantern, knowing how precise, how smart, how analytical this guy is, we know that he's not just going to let something fall and cause a fire, He falls into a deep depression, which Kim tries to help him out of with drinks. It's obviously very understandable. Losing a sibling's probably tough, Hopefully I don't have to experience that myself anytime soon, but losing a sibling is very tough, Howard takes on the responsibility of arranging Chuck's funeral, obviously, because they started this firm together, and he feels like he was part of the reason that Chuck did this to himself after their argument at HHM, so it's kind of a burden to him, so he feels like he must take this all into his own hands, which kind of makes sense, but a lot of factors factored into this. Let's move on to Mike Ehrmantraut. Mike Ehrmantraut receives his first payment from Madrigal Electromotive as a contracted security consultant, which Gus Fring arranged to launder the money Mike stole from the Salamancas, so he doesn't look suspicious to the government. Though it was meant to be a paper transaction, Mike enters a Madrigal facility, performs a detailed audit, and turns the results over to the manager with instructions to let Lydia Rodarte Quayle know he was there. He was kind of monitoring things while he was at it, which is interesting. Tell Lydia I was here and that I can get my check. But anyways, following Mike's advice, after Hector Salamanca's stroke, Nacho Varga takes the fake capsules containing ibuprofen from Hector and replaces them with Hector's real nitroglycerin. Again, we kind of discussed this in the last episode's review, so they don't get suspicious, you know what I mean? He tries to dispose of the fakes, but is interrupted by Gus, who says they need to meet with Juan Bolsa, maybe because there's Yeah, and at first, I mean, Nacho's probably nervous because he's thinking I'm in hot water here. Like, they know what I did. But when they meet, Juan puts Nacho and Arturo in charge of the Salamanca operation for the time being. That's just all it is. Gus is definitely suspicious, but he doesn't let anyone know about it. Afterward, Nacho drives to a bridge and throws the fakes away, unaware Victor has followed him. So yeah, he's pretty much in a death trap because Gus knows that he pretty much poisoned Hector, and we don't know if Hector's dead or not. Obviously, in Breaking Bad, we know he survived, but yeah, we don't know how bad this injury was. Several. Wow, this is a really short plot, actually. I'm kind of zooming through this. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should. It's a pretty straightforward episode. I don't think anything crazy happens, just this the aftermath of the finale. Several of Chuck's friends and associates attend his funeral and give Jimmy their condolences, kind of acting like they care. I feel like Davis and Maine, Clifford definitely has a resentment for Jimmy, but he shows up to the proceedings and he's like, your brother was great and you're still kind of carrying on your legacy, the family, You have a 1-year suspension, but I still think you're carrying that weight quite well, is kind of what he's saying there. After the service, Howard tells Jimmy and Kim he believes he is responsible for Chuck's death because he forced Chuck out of HHM after their malpractice insurance premium increased, and now Jim knows that this was going to cause a problem, but he didn't realize that it was going to cause an argument between Howard and him, and it raised their premiums, and, yada, 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 but... So now Jimmy's hearing this and he's probably even more depressed than he was before. Jimmy conceals his role in causing the increase and immediately regains his happy-go-lucky demeanor. So he's kind of back to normal. He kind of had to mourn and act like he cared for a moment, but after what his brother said about him, we know that he doesn't care that much about Chuck either. The feelings are mutual between those two. Smoke received critical acclaim from critics. 100% rating, 8.76 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously this is a highly critically acclaimed show, and especially on that platform. Smoke kicks off Better Call Saul's 4th season by finally shifting Jimmy's disturbing transition to Saul into full gear. So he hasn't really picked up the name of Saul Goodman quite yet. He did for his commercial business, but he's still kind of Jimmy McGill, and he's still kind of known as that. But he's definitely going to change into Saul this season. 8.3 out of 10 on IGN. It's a heavy, reflective chapter that readily relies on silence to create both suspense and sorrow. I agree. I don't have much else to say. This is going to be a really short review. We're going to talk about Dahmer, the pilot for Dahmer as well, and we're going to play Madden tonight. So that's going to be a